Welcome to Survivor Everything. I'm your host, Liam, and you know what really grinds my gears? Force Final Four fire making. We all know what it is, but for the few Survivor viewers that maybe just watched up to Heroes vs. Villains and stopped, Force Final Four fire making is a game-changing rule that was established back in Season 35, where at the Final Four, instead of it being a normal round where all the four remaining players cast a vote to eliminate someone, the winner of the Final Four Immunity Challenge instead chooses a player to take to the Final Three with them, while the other two non-chosen players duke it out in a fire-making challenge to secure that third and final spot. Now, this might sound similar to the Final Four tiebreaker that would occur since Season 10, and that's because it is. But it's forced now, so production thinks that adds life and zest to the game. I'm here to explain why I find this forced game mechanic to be a hindrance to the show and the integrity of the game itself, and why the old normal voting round was just better for the Final Four. Let's dive into this topic, and why don't you guys go ahead and take a shot every single time I say forced Final Four fire making, because you'll be dead by the end of this video. Going over the history of the first Final Four fire making we ever saw, it occurred all the way back in Season 10 Survivor Palau, while at the end of the game, two close allies who have been running the game together in Tom and Ian, and who have sworn to take each other to the Final Three, are now at a crossroad. With Ian understanding that Tom is the biggest threat left in the game to win, he also understands that he needs to break his word and vote Tom out. Ian conspires with his other close ally in Katie, but at the Final Four Immunity Challenge, Tom wins, securing his spot at the Final Three. Back at camp, Ian lets this slip out.
Well, if I would have won immunity today, it'd have been a really difficult decision for me to Tom. So I'm glad that I didn't have to make it, and I appreciate you sticking with me.
Tom immediately thinks why Ian, his close ally, should be voting for Jen to go home whether Tom won the last immunity challenge or not, would ever say that. And all hell breaks loose when Tom confronts Ian back at camp and at Tribal Council.
When I told you, like it was a no-brainer, and you said, I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision. It would have been a tough one to make for me.
Right.
And I'm like, what am I? I'm the fool who's doing the right thing, and to you it was going to be a decision if we came to this point of the game.
Though Tom is confident that he and the two girls will vote for Ian, Ian's relationship with Katie has her vote alongside with Ian and to target Jen while Tom and Jen vote for Ian, causing a tie. Once the revote occurs, and it's still a deadlock tie, this puts Ian and Jen in the first Final Four fire-making challenge ever. This is the basis for almost all 6 times the Final Four fire-making has ever happened, and it's a simple but strong mechanic that should be preserved. This is the basis for almost all 6 times the Final Four fire-making challenge has happened before, and it's a simple but strong mechanic that should be preserved. The seasons that have the Final Four fire-making at it before it becomes forced are Season 10 Palau, Season 12 Panama, Season 13 Cook Islands, Season 17 Gabon, Season 30 Worlds Apart, and finally, Season 32 Quran. What all these seasons have in common is that the biggest threat on the board that can be targeted is somehow able to display a good enough social game to scramble one extra vote from someone to force a fire-making competition, a lifeline in the game that player wouldn't have otherwise. This lifeline aspect is something that the producers realize, which they find exciting, but they don't realize that it's also exciting because these players earned it. It's better for the game and much more entertaining to watch these players have dynamic social games instead of just watching people practice fire at the finale of every season now, with them having to find new ways to switch it up while using editing tricks to make fire practicing interesting to watch. These Final Four fire-making challenges, though, had much more drama and suspense to them.
The best we can do is force a tie and then have to go to fire-making, and that's really scary. Plus, Ty and I have been like a zipper that doesn't quite zip for the whole game.
Even at the Final Four fire-making challenges that occur in Panama and Cook Islands are interesting, even though they also come about due to somewhat of production interference. For both those seasons, the two major threats to win the game both hold the super immunity idol, so no one will vote for them in that Final Four round because if they do, they're in fear of elimination themselves, and the second major jury threats both had one immunity that round, leaving the two weakest players to compete in the Final Four fire-making competition in both back-to-back seasons. Even though it's the two weakest players competing, is the fact that in this position, the two stronger players that are safe are still fighting over who they want to stay. Especially in Panama, when Aris and Terry are both fighting to try to have their person stay in the game because they want their person to prevail so they can use them in that final 3 voting round. Another interesting aspect is that since the biggest threats in both seasons are holding super immunity idols, they could just play the idol after the votes are read on the pawn that they want to keep and eliminate their opposition's last ally. I believe Terry should have done this to save Danielle immediately, keeping her from going to fire and risking her game in the life, making her being extremely grateful to Terry for saving her, and securing a better chance for Danielle to vote out Aris and not him in the final 3 round. Now, if Yul would have done this to save Becky and idled out Sundra without a Final Four fire-making tiebreaker, that would have broke the agreement the Final Four had to just let the two girls duke it out, and that most likely would have had Sundra vote for Aussie to win instead of Yul, and that would have caused Aussie to win Cook Islands in its entirety as well.
Instead of going behind each other's back, none of that happened at all. So I'm voting for Becky out, Yul's voting for Sundra out, they're obviously voting for each other, and we're going to let the cards fall where they may.
Even with the Super Idol forcing the two weakest players to basically compete instead of one of the two strongest in the Final Four fire-making, it also allowed for a normal voting round to occur for players to demonstrate their social game and have allies that can still cost them the game if they play it or not. These 6 Final Four immunity challenges are tense-filled, and I have always felt they were well-deserved, well-earned, and great fun to watch. Now we move on to Forced Final Four fire-making, which is widely speculated to have been introduced by the producers to mitigate the chances of a season-long fan favorite becoming the fallen angel at the end of their season. First appearing in season 35, Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hustlers, Chrissy Hoffback won the Final Four immunity challenge, and with that win came an advantage in the form of knowledge, and must be read in secret.
This is the last and perhaps biggest secret of the game, and you are the only one who knows. Tonight, you are in charge, and will cast the only vote. You will choose one person to sit.
Now this obviously is not an advantage, but more of a format warping twist coming at the last second, and you can actually see the very moment Chrissy dies inside. From the very moment Forced Final Four fire-making came into the game, it caused irreversible damage to the integrity of the season it was on, and it continues to in almost all future seasons it appears in. The first and foremost important topic to bring up when it comes to the failings of forcing this competition is how it's either unfairly helped someone's game when they never would have gotten that help in the first place, just based on their social and strategic merits, but it has also hurt the games of winners or people who could have won. Let's use the last season I was just talking about, season 35, as an example. When Chrissy is forced to take someone to the final 3 with her and put the other 2 in a fire-making competition, this takes away agency from the players, who we all know this season were going to vote Ben out 3-1. If this happens, Chrissy, Devin, and Ryan are fighting in the final 3. A very fun final 3 to watch, and not Ben, who wins this fire-making competition against Devin, kicking Devin out, and then going on to win the game entirely.
Final spot will be earned by a fire-making showdown. You each have the exact same supplies. Your job is to build a fire that is high enough and hot enough to burn through that cord. First person that burns.
When Dom wins Final Four Immunity Challenge and puts his closest ally and biggest jury threat, Wendell, up into the fire-making competition, Wendell wins Final Four fire-making and then proceeds to win the game. Both Ben and Wendell had no right being at the final 3 to win the game, but they were saved from a game mechanic that takes away agency and strategy from the players.
Angela going crazy now trying to get it going. There it is. Wendell makes fire. Wendell will join Laurel and Dominic at the final 3.
Even season 38, Edge of Extinction, it's a double whammy since the 2 people in Forced Final Four fire-making are the 2 biggest jury threats on the board. But Rick Devin should have easily just been voted out 3-1 here since Chris Underwood has the immunity necklace, but Chris also gets favor from Rick and the rest of the jury by being the sole person to take Rick out, even though if it were a normal voting round, it would have been a group effort. And stop me if you've heard this one, but Chris wins fire-making and then proceeds to win the game. Have you seen the pattern that the game's trajectory can change entirely due to a forced mechanic the producers have implemented? This trend of players who could have easily been voted out on a normal Final Four voting round, but instead compete in forced fire-making and end up winning the game, entirely still continues to this day. This trend of players who could have easily been voted out on a normal Final Four voting round, but instead compete in a forced fire-making competition and end up winning the game entirely, still continues to this day. It's easy to think that in that season, Kenzie is voted out 3-1 in the Final Four round, and Charlie ultimately wins the game at the end, maybe even all the votes, with his desired Final 3 of Ben, Liz, and himself. It's funny how the producers clearly set up the Forced Final Four fire-making to save fan favorites like Charlie or like Rick Devins, and it allows them a fighting chance to save themselves and win. And this is what happened the first time it was introduced with Ben Treberg, but since then, it has also allowed the only player who could beat the fan favorite a fighting chance to survive in the game as well. And in cases for like Dom and Charlie, the fan favorite lost due to Forced Final fire-making being in the game.
And there it is. Kenzie's done it. She has earned the final spot at the final 3.
The next issue is how it limits players' strategic options, tying their hands behind their back and robbing us of potential good gameplay and TV. Just like how we had riveting TV with the first 6 Final Four fire-making competitions, when they were just natural ties, we had the option to get this type of result during seasons 39 and 40. In season 39, Island of the Idols, if there's no forced fire-making, then is Tommy still able to convince Nora, the Final Four immunity winner, to still vote with him, causing a tie so it's not just a 3-1 vote against Tommy? I mean, not only that, but Dean and Lauren were also extremely strong competitors in this game, and at that point, it could also be a 3-1 against Dean, a 3-1 against Lauren, or it could be a 2-2 tie between Tommy and Lauren, or Tommy and Dean, and then they go into fire making, because at that point, if there's no forced fire making, Tommy doesn't need to lie that he doesn't know how to make fire. We are robbed of seeing these players do different choices and play out different dynamics due to this implementation of this mechanic. And it's the same thing in the following season during the finale of Winners at War. Sure, it's obviously the smartest gameplay move for Sarah, Natalie, and Michelle just to vote out Tony 3-1, since he has dominated the game, especially in the back half. But if Sarah meant what she said at the end when she talked about being Tony's partner at that Final Four Tribal Council,
if I'm making fire, it's going to be against Tony. And I don't think I would truly want to make fire against anyone else.
Why?
I mean, I love this guy.
Oh,
and
stop, man. Relax.
he's my partner. And if we're going to get shot, I'd rather us shoot each other than have someone else shoot at us.
then there's still a chance that Tony's relationship with Sarah causes her to vote with him, and forcing Tony to go into fire with Michelle instead of Sarah. And then this gives both Tony and Sarah a chance to be at the final 3 fighting for that victory crown royale. The game changes completely just by letting the players have agency in their own game, but the producers clearly forget this at points.
This decision is very important, and I'm gonna be selfish. I'm gonna be Nora. So how I'm going to dispense the decision is gonna be different than most people play it.
Another issue with this forced Final Four fire making is the fact that it has the ability to lessen a winner's game strategically, which I suppose is what the producers want, but it's nonetheless interference from production in order to give a certain player a Deus Ex Machina in order to stay in the game. A clear example of this issue aren't players like Ben or Wendell or Chris Underwood who won the game due to forced fire making, but a player like Rachel who won Season 47. If the Final Four round is just a normal voting round, Rachel, Sue, and Teenie would all easily vote out Sam 3-1, and the fan favorite and only real competition to Rachel would be gone. This meant that Rachel would be able to drag Goats to the end, form her intended Final 3, and take out every late game threat including Sam before Final Tribal Council. This would be a much stronger finish for Rachel's game and showcase more control and strength, but this was never going to be an option for her since by the time the Final 4 comes around, Sam always has a chance to survive and make it to the Final Tribal Council. And it mitigates the amount of control that she has immediately after the Final 5 round is complete. Sure, the producers are probably mitigating on purpose to produce dramatic upsets, but it's hindering players' full potentials and how they can get a stranglehold on the game to their utmost advantage. My final reason why I don't like forced Final Four fire making is because it just affects the integrity of the game as a whole. It's clear that when it was first introduced in Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hustlers, it was straight up unfair. It was a twist that no one could see coming, it happens at the very last second of the game, it's a game warping change at that, and it also completely messes up the plans and setups that 3 out of 4 players had already made, just by interference from production. But the thing that makes Survivor different to Big Brother, Deal or No Deal Island, MasterChef, or any shows like that, is that in those shows, once players are up for elimination due to failing their immunity competition, they usually have another competition that occurs in order to see if they can save themselves, or save someone else. In Survivor, though, there is one immunity challenge, and that's it. No second chance, no second challenge, nothing else to try to save yourself. This is where your social game comes in, and where it becomes the key to winning the game. The reason why Survivor is the best social game out there is due to it being the game that needs you to rely on it the most. And that's because of the limited amount of opportunities any player has to keep themselves safe from elimination. So you need to form bonds and relationships in order to form alliances to keep yourself in the game.
So, in a revote, the only people who would vote would be Ty and Michelle. Do you see a reason to revote, or are you guys locked in?
Yeah, I'm locked in.
I'm locked in as well.
I think that the Final Four fire making challenge is a hindrance to the quality of the show and to the game itself. We are taking away agency from the players, forcing them to play with limited options in the Final 4 rounds, all while crowning winners who would never get the win in the first place if it were just based on their social and strategic game, or hurting their games by not letting them reach their full potential. I love the show, and I hope I can play it one day, But I can also recognize when there's something I believe to be a mistake, and with the mistake being as big as a game-changing one that has affected the last 14 recorded seasons, it's something that needs to be addressed. And since Jeff just posted that Survivor 50 would be a fan-voted season, and we can even vote to get rid of the forced Final Four fire making, everybody go to that poll and vote for that right now, because we need to. We need to get rid of it right away. For fire making challenge. Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. Everybody grab your torches and head back to camp. I'll see you in the next one.